For today's episode of our Inset, we are going to focus on the learning interventions in the new normal. But before we continue, let us first be oriented about the learning objectives we need to accomplish for this episode. Number 1. Explain the learning intervention guidelines in the new normal mandated by DepEd. Number 2. Apply the learning intervention guidelines in concrete and hypothetical situations. Number 3. Foster positive attitude towards the learning intervention guidelines in the new normal. And the last one is develop a sense of accountability towards learning outcomes by way of proactive interventions to learners who have academic, financial, psycho-emotional, and family difficulties. To formalize everything, let us pay tribute to our national anthem and Bukol hymn. It is to be followed by an opening prayer, and after that, let us amuse ourselves with a short clip starred by our great actors and actresses in the department. This comedic film is entitled Connecting. And then later on, we are going to watch some Nagbabagang Balita brought to you by our CPG's newscaster, Michelle Padillo.
Korean diha. Sige na kang Korean.
Sumo ka sa ning
Dali, sige dali. Uy, naunsa naman niya akong dagway na gaya mukat naman yung taon. Ino, asa na ba niya akong lipstick? Uy, asa naman niya akong lipstick in town? Uy, gihim mo naman po ka aning ideal nga. Kuan, tana po doros bongbong ron. Gihim mo na po ning chok. Tessa, magpagwapa sa tagkadiyot. May ganit ka na pa na akong lipstick diri. Unsa una din sa ideal, himo na ning chok. Mamilit na po doros bongbong ron. Asa na mo to akong lapis-lapis diri? Nangapudpud naman po kanin taon Ginoo ko. Unsa naman ni dinhi haram ning kuan ni nga ni Bi. Talha. Di naman nimo agi kaysa. Pwede ra ba ka ano? Ginoo ko nung sa naman ni. Asa na ba to akong sudlan? Di katong sudlan akong gamhanan makapagwapan ako tara. Nagani ka wani hilabting idol kanira ba ko sa idol magsipangilabot niya akong mga gamit. Unsa naman to na akong buhok? Oy magpa-straight ko oy. Unsa naman sige na naman ta nag bisitas so na lang ta ani kapag atiman na akong mga buhok. Unsa ni?
Ayo. Ayo.
Unsa na iya?
Sa Ninja Van delivery ako sa Shopee.
Mama, ako ni delivery oy, Ninja Van.
Asa na mo yung ibang order ni anak? Pila na ba itong bayo ni anak? Muna na itong ikapabrihan karon kay sige lang tanig Shopee, sige lang tanig nganig Lazada mo na korda sa itong kwarta. Basi bisitas na ko nag-ipang-order na pila ba na eh? Pila, pangutan na! Pangutan na ko sa nag-order ni Yuna.
Nawi, box mo di ba? Dali okay maikog ta
Sige saan pa nag-order nga na? Ikaw, kumag-order. Ako ang order? Oo! Masa mo na?
Naabot ka na isama ni kinita na mo kay
Uy,
tarong.
uy, basi kang bisitas na ayaw. Sa basi yung papa yung tawag ko. Basi ko na po itong bisitas ang puka na na. 15 ang pila?
145
1459. Ay, sa basa kong banahan, mabisitas na ha? Sumula po na, sige na po na.
Saan mo ka video?
Meanwhile,
Good morning. Ako pa madaling usa. Asa naman akong mga classmate eh. City naman.
Zay!
Hi, Zay! Uy, assignment.
Kita na duha?
Kita rang duha. Wa pa sila. Dapat assignment.
Uy!
Sa English, uy. Mas, basta na ato. Tayo si Tani. Wa pa lagi bay, assignment bay. Suga ba bay?
Hi,
Blas on. Nga naman ang punding blas on nga mura man ang sirena. Unsa na ba yung taon ni mga baligya karon eh? Uy, Ginoo ko yung taong kadagang atik-atik bayad lang, makapalit lang ta. Sige lang gani pangwartahan ng mga tao niya. Dito mo dito ka pangwartahan eh. Nya tumisitas pangayoon ra. Pinalit ra.
Short tawagin na yung mom. Uy!
Diyos ko.
Pida, banhaan man aron ko sa manong hitabo ah. Sa ni hitabo ah, sulit buntag sa iyo, pagarabi man ang banha ah. Ano mo gibuhat niya?
Hi, sweet. Good morning. Gapa na ka, sweet?
Ano sa naman ang mura naman kas burikat pasil sweet.
Ay, pag-sure din na. Ay, naluya maganda diri.
Wala kayo bisig atupang ng diha, isa may ipagapahan.
Mag-klase, naman ko online. Klase ngon maguniya mo ang kinagwapuhang principal nga basta matubang sa mga estudyante, gwapa gyud, mauni, nagpagwapa ko kay ang teacher ba yung may visual ages mga bata. Unya gwapa na ko sila.
Nanay kay estudyante diha, nga laptop ni mga tubangan.
Wa pa gani.
Nagduda na mga igo ani sweet. Ano ba panahon ako? Sige lang jud kag atubangan ng imong laptop.
Ibang kita ka mo ni online. Kamating ko ni online mo. Wa mo gunay sa mong panahon sa una. Agaro naman ni mga bata mo dali mag-online. Apil-apil pud may
Masanila online. Ha? Wala kay panahon.
Nga naman na igod.
Kay panahon.
Pero may maguna.
Ha?
Pagwat sa god, wa pa gani. Naglakot na jukog mayo ha. Naglakot na jukog mayo. Bagti ka din ha. Pagwat, wa pa'y gabi eh.
Bago pa di gabi.
Alang-alang ko sa mga ay.
Jesus, gwapa ay.
Maglangkot kay ko na ilis na jud ka sa mong principal perting gwapa at asa batog barog. Pag ikaw taas lang rabray mo magbubarog, bantay lagi ka lagi.
Sweet. Sweet.
Ay,
Oh.
asa lagi? Nga no. Ano ka biya?
Ito na sa ulo.
Bagyan iko ang paggabi ay hindi maging nga napit kinit. Online pa mi. Mag-online mo. Alas utso na ra ba?
Karong rapito.
Human na taon, human na sig balik ina na uy lami. Karon, pagbuhat sa mag-online sa ina ka mag-online.
Wala naman lagi na. Wala naman lagi kayo mga estudyante yan eh.
Hay ba? Kasabi ka na.
Daghan ba yan ni Day na...
Nanya din eh. Nakita ka nila.
grabe kita.
Uy, Ginoo ko marunong sa pintaw, Ginoo ko pwede i-delete ka na. Ginoo ko pwede i-delete, Ginoo ko iris na na. Uy, usa ka manini ah. Ato na lang iyo.
Sa ulo ng mga nagbabagang balita, isang estudyante di umano'y nag-post ng kanyang reklamo sa Facebook patungkol sa kanyang module na mahirap sagutin. Base sa post ng nasabing bata,
Pisting module ay, dili in town mi bright kaayo na maansira na mo ang pang senior high na lesson. Dili gyud in town 3D among utok, okay? Grade 9 pa mi, dili mi grade 11 and 12.
isa sa mga guro ng paaralan ay nagbigay ng kanyang komento patungkol sa post. Ayon sa kanya,
In lieu of the recent post of a student complaining about the module, we would like to suggest a better way to solve the problem. If you find the module and the activity difficult, feel free to contact the teacher and ask him or her politely about your queries. Our cell phone numbers and names are printed at the bottom of the module. If you can't find any number, you can chat us. Demeaning the module and cursing the teachers will not be beneficial to you or to anyone. Being reactive about it is not the solution. Let us be proactive and be respectful. Let us work hand in hand. Remember that we are a family and families reach out to one another.
umani ng batikos ang Facebook post ng isang netizen dahil sa kanyang pahayag tungkol sa mga maling module. Sa kanyang post, sinabi niyang,
Mauni karon ang new learning sa DepEd. Ang mga new learning sa mga kabataan karon. So, kahibalo na ta kung unsa gyud ang future ani nila. No offense to our teachers.
hindi ito nagustuhan ng ilang mga guro, dahilan para umani ito ng halo-halong reaksyon at komento. At ito rin ang nag-joke sa netizen para i-delete ang nasabing post. Laman ng modules at sakripisyo ng mga guro trending sa social media. Yan ang tinutukan ni Mark Logan.
Pupuntahan ang bawat sulok para maihatid ang mga modules at pagkatapos ng mahabang araw ng paghahanda ng mga requirements ng mga bagets. Siguro naman, pwedeng humirit.
Napakaganda mo na malakas makaakit, para kang anghel na umaawit sa langit.
Kaya kung magpakakikay man sila, huwag nyo namang isumbong sa principal, ha?
Puro kay TikTok. Apo, sinumpong po kayo. Punta na po kayo doon.
O diba? Huwag naman. Mga parents busy sa papel na teachers. Balik eskwela po. Paano na ang tong it's nay? Ang tomatay. Bagong buhay? Itong tropa ng mga madir, tila may goals na mag-top 1. Ang iba ay sus, imbierna na sa kasasagot ng module. Pero kapansin-pansin din sa mga module ang kakaibang mga tanong at mga sagot. Tulad ng, ano ang masasabi mo sa mga taong nananatiling loyal sa minamahal? Sagot, sana all. Ano ang masasabi mo sa katipunan na binuo ni Andres Bonifacio? Sagot, okay lang. Tinawag ni Rizal si Josephine bilang, sagot, baby girl, magbigay ng mga anyong tubig. Isinama mo, sabaw. Mamili sa tatlo, coronavirus, social media o module. Sagot mo, ang module ay nagdudulot ng takot sa bawat tao. Kung ang silid ay lugar, ang fiesta ay pangyayari, ano naman ang kapitbahay? Sagot, chismosa. Kulayan at gupitin ng mga bata bago idikit sa kahon. My God, kawawang mga bata. Speaking of kawawa, eto na palang advocacy ngayon ng mga bata. Teacher, kunin nyo na ako dito sa bahay. Ang tapang ni nanay magturo. Eto pa, sumulat ng rap tungkol sa karanasan sa buhay. Problema to, kasi grade 3 pa lang yung sasagot. What is ethics? Ethics, kapag wala kang pantawag, ethics mo na lang. Magbigay ng pangungusap na may tayutay. Sagot, ang tatay ko ay nadapa. Tay, tayutay, tayutay. Mark Logan.
At yan ang mga balita ang aking nakalap sa aking pagpapatrol. Mary Cecil P. Oxero, nag-uulat para sa bayan.
Now, let us reflect on the news report if these incidents were familiar to you. Write and submit your answers to the link given. Number 1. Are there certain situations or issues that are relatable to you? Number 2. Are there certain situations or issues that are not included in the clip but has happened to you? Number 3. If there are situations or issues that are encountered, what learning interventions did you implement to answer the learning gap? Number 4. What was your takeaway lesson in that situation?
Good morning, amazing teachers of CPG. I'm Teacher Grace from Junior High School Department. It is such an opportunity to share with you some specific scenarios that we have encountered during the distribution of learning activity sheets. And we will try to brainstorm some interventions that we can do considering the following situation I will be giving to you. Scene 1. Teacher John, a Filipino subject teacher in grade 10, noticed that Jason did not get his learning activity sheets from week 3 to 5. In the recent news, there was a COVID case in Barangay Tuburan. Jason is from Mandawa. What intervention should Teacher John do?
Sheila, an enrolled grade 7 student, has moved to another town. That's why it is difficult for her to get her last. Teacher Anna is advisor of Sheila. What intervention should Teacher Anna do?
Isip, isip! Scene 3. In Barangay Batu-Batu, 12 senior high students did not submit their last for week 1 to 5. When Teacher Sarah texted one of the parents, the parent responded that, "Ma'am, oy, naglisod manggod kuno sila og basa og sabot sa ilang last." Based on the situation, what intervention should Teacher Sarah do? Isip, isip! Scene 4. Teacher Paul read an online rant on Facebook from Janine saying that lisuda maning last nagihatag sa Fidel Mundo pang senior high school man. In the comment section, a classmate of Janine commented that taka man ka sa yunra man kaayo. Based from the differing feedback from the last, what intervention should Teacher Paul do? You may write your answers on your laptops in a Word format and send it to the output link that will be provided to you.
That was Ma'am Grace, and later on, we shall provide you with learning strategies that will be used in those scenarios. For now, we shall proceed. With the pursuance of the school year 2020-2021, problems arise as some view that equality in attaining quality education is not true to the poor and marginalized. With this decision coming from the Department of Education, a lot of people reacted. The Department of Education received backlash and support from different agencies. Others expressed, how can we address the learning gap?
How do we address these learning gaps? Actually, we can address these learning gaps through effective, safe, and systematic learning interventions. Hello there, I am Mary Shalo Padillo from the Senior High School Department, and I am going to take over the lesson from here. Now I'm going to discuss in the following slides the responses that are undertaken by the Department of Education. And basically, these are all laid out in the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan.
Like what we said a while ago, that the Department of Education's response was stipulated in the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. In here, they follow the following principles. First is the protection or protect the health, safety, and well-being of learners, teachers, and personnel, and prevent the further transmission of COVID-19. Next is ensure learning continuity through K 12 curriculum adjustments, alignment of learning materials, deployment of multiple learning delivery modalities, provision of corresponding training for teachers and school leaders, and proper orientation of parents or guardians of the learners. Next is to facilitate the safe return of teaching and non teaching personnel and learners to workplaces and schools, taking into consideration the scenarios projected by the Department of Health and Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases in the Philippines, complemented by also other credible resources and balanced with DepEd's own risk assessments. Next is to be sensitive to equity considerations and concerns and endeavor to address them to the best we can. And lastly, to link and bridge the BELCP to DepEd's pivot to quality and into the future of education under the framework of sulong edukalidad and futures thinking in education.
So what we have learned so far from the slides that we have read is that the basic education learning continuity plan stipulates three things. First is there should be a protection for both parties, which includes the teachers and the students. Next is there should be an insurance that learning equity and learning quality are both achieved in this school year. And then the last one is that there should be a sensitivity to equity of considerations and concerns, which means that as teachers in these times, um, we need to be we need to be considerate and we need to broaden our perspective and understanding to the different scenarios that are happening around us. Like for example, naka-estudyante na naka-estudyante na nibalhin. So what should we do? Should we just cut it off or should we find ways to still provide learning and education for that child or learner? I mean, yeah, once again, it's about case-to-case basis and case-to-case understanding. And then, I remember when we had, or there was a COVID case in Bienvenido, specifically in Poblacion. And then the next day, our principal announced that we are not going to go to the school. We are going to be working at home. And then, everyone stayed at home. Well, that was a response there was a response respecting what are stipulated in the basic education learning continuity plan, which is one, to protect both parties, the teachers and
What does the BLCP stipulate on face to face learning? In the areas under the moderate and high risk severity grading, this is not possible. However, there are learners with disabilities whose conditions require face to face instruction. This will be then the subject of further discussion within DepEd with partners and parents. Next is face to face option may also be feasible in very low risk areas, such as the geographically disadvantaged and conflict affected areas or GIDCA, with no history of infection and very low and easily monitored external context, but with teachers and learners living in the vicinity of the area. Next is any face to face learning delivery must have proper risk assessment and must adhere to the health protocols in place. Potential learning spaces in the community near the school may be explored to add spaces for the conduct of classes with the appropriate social distancing. I hope that it's all clear. Now let's move on.
the learning interventions that I'm going to include here as per research are not new. They were already introduced and now they are being reintroduced. But of course, we're going to inject and contextualize, localize these programs. So, I am going to read the following programs in the following slides. So I'm just going to pop up once in a while and give my thoughts about these programs and how can we make it contextualized so that it can be used as a learning program in our community.
The type, modality, approach, or strategy that we're going to discuss for the face-to-face are the following. First is Misosa, then Impact, then OHSP, and then Project Ease. Next is face-to-face and modular learning, and then the last one is community-based instruction for ALS. Now, what is Misosa? Misosa is modified in-school and off-school approach. It means that there are two learning environments that are being catered in here. Now, modified in-school, off-school approach frees the children from the confines of the four corners of the classroom as it allows pupils to learn even while at home or in the community. Actually, this is the original concept of Misosa. Misosa combines formal and non-formal learning activities to meet the needs for classrooms, learning materials, and teachers. It likewise taps community resources for the instructional materials or sources of knowledge. Under Misosa, a class of pupils is divided into two groups. Groups 1 goes to class for a period of time, while the group 2 learns at home or in other learning venues, such as barangay hall learning through modules or performing assigned tasks. Now, what is great about Misosa being used as a learning intervention is that it offers two learning environments. So, it is very much applicable in our community. We can have the modular learning at home, and we can also create learning environments or learning spaces. With the right amount of class size and program, this alternative delivery mode is a good learning intervention program. There are two things to remember in Misosa. First is learning materials must be devised to cater the in-school and off-school approach, and class program must address the needed skill and lesson to be mastered. Thus, we are going to cherry pick the needed skills or the less mastered skills for that child to master in a certain time and in a certain pace. Next is class schedule must be prepared and must observe the IATF standard. Currently, all gatherings are not permitted because of the alarming surge of COVID cases in Bohol. Thus, we have to think twice and assess the situation. Now let's go to the next one. This is called Project Ease. One of the ADMs at the secondary level is the Effective and Affordable Secondary Education or EASE program, which was designed and implemented to complement the existing formal system. It is applicable to students who cannot attend schools for a short while or can only attend classes seasonally due to socioeconomic, geographical, and physical circumstances. In addition, EASE program aims to cater to advanced students whose learning needs are not met by the conventional learning system. EASE program makes it possible for students to learn outside their school through self-instructional modules. When the student goes back to school, he or she will be tested on how well he or she has learned his or her lesson. Now, I believe that our school has already offered this kind of delivery mode. Though the concept of ease is to provide affordable education, its method of giving self-instructional handouts that cater advanced students whose learning needs are not met by the conventional learning system is the perfect fit for fast learners. A while ago, we have an example in our scenario that talks about the divided reaction of the lesson. The fast learners find the lesson very easy, while the slow learners are lagging. By providing supplemental activities to the fast learners and remediation to slow learners, learning intervention can be met through Project Ease. Now, let's go to the next one. This is Project Impact or Instructional Management by Parents and Community Teachers. Actually, by its name palang, we can really foresee that this is going to be a good learning intervention program. Now, the extension of educational services beyond formal elementary education is also provided by Impact. This was developed by SEAMEO Inotech to address high student population and high percentage dropouts. It is a management system where the parents, teachers, and community collaborate to provide the child with quality education at less costs. Learning materials are based on national curriculum standards of the Department of Education. It uses audio and video tapes in English, science, mathematics, Filipinos, and information and communications technology or ICT in teaching the lessons. The goal of Impact is to initially address the crowded school population. However, if we put this in the context as a learning intervention, the program offers a great aid as it covers diverse learners. I'm going to reiterate what it employs. First, it employs program teachers for bright pupils, or program teachers or bright pupils to become aides for a specific task, for example, reading buddies and math tutors. Next is peer group with members of 6 to 8 utilized as a strategy in this program. Next is self-study that allows learners to cater their own pace. Now, Project Impact makes use of collaborative and self-directed approaches, which is a viable option for learning intervention if we're going to use this. Because in the pandemic times, we have a lot of time to do it in our own pace. Now, what we have to do as teachers is first we have to create the material and then do the assessment and lastly, give the feedback. Let's go to OHSP or Open High School Program. More or less, this is an ADM. Now, it is an alternative mode of formal secondary education program run by the Bureau of Secondary Education or BSE of the Department of Education of the Republic of the Philippines. The program provides an opportunity for elementary school graduates, high school dropouts, and successful examinees of the PEPT or the placement test to complete secondary education in a purely distance learning mode. The program provides printed self-learning modules for students to use for their lessons and classroom activities. This not only talks about the students who are lagging off in their lessons, but it talks in a general sense about the students who are lagging in their timeline. So, to those who are still in elementary, they can still catch up even amidst the pandemic. Now, let's go to Modified Shifting of Classes or MSC. In the shifting of classes, teaching is directly focused on concepts with corresponding activities. Supplemental activities and assessments shall be brought by the learners when shifted at home. The shifting depends on how many days the competencies could be covered based on the competency codes and the number of competencies to be covered in all learning areas. I think this could only be done if we're going to have the face-to-face classes by next year. And I think it's going to happen because there are trials just tonight as I was reading the news. The president has a go signal with the trial on face-to-face classes. Now, modified shifting of classes can be a good program for it. Now, let's have still shifting classes with dyadic teaching or SCDT. In this scheme, there would be 2 teachers inside the class per learning area. The number of learners they would handle should be the total number of learners they handled in the normal days. During the dyadic teaching, learners have to go through a series of individual activities after teaching the learning competencies to be facilitated and monitored by the 2 teachers. So in here, it's still shifting of classes, but it has a scheme that that needs two teachers. And the sad thing about this shifting of classes with dyadic teaching is that we are running out of teachers because most of us are already bombarded with different tasks. Some of us are lagging even with the photocopying and segregation of the test papers. But of course, with the plan and commitment, we can all do this. But we need to plan ahead before implementing this kind of learning intervention program. We're going to the programs that are centered and focused only to what is essential. We have ESM focused teaching. This is for the junior high school. In this approach, only English, science, mathematics shall be taught in school. Other learning areas shall be using the modular home-based approach. Next is RESM focused teaching. This is for the elementary or RESMT. In this approach, only reading, English, science, and mathematics shall be taught in school. Other learning areas shall be using the modular or home-based approach. Last is core specialized focused training or teaching. This is specialized for senior high school. In this approach, only core and specialized subjects shall be taught in school. Applied subjects shall be using the home-based life skill modular approach. So these are just options that the Department of Education are looking into, so that they have the option to choose which among these programs or schemes are going to employ for the face-to-face classes. The mentioned strategies before focus only to specific subjects which are deemed important. I think it is a great intervention strategy to those learners who still did not master the basics. I know that as teachers, we have encountered students who are slow readers and are lagging in math. Through giving activities which center on the basic and essential, there is a chance that after the pandemic, they might catch up. Now, the last one is for the out of school youths and those who are lagging in timeline. Now, we have the community based instruction. The learner facilitators or facilitator instructional manager or ALS mobile teachers or district ALS coordinator goes to a sitio or a barangay with a set of learning materials to conduct learning lessons until such time the learners have become literate before going to another sitio or barangay. However, depending on the need of the learners, the ALS mobile teacher goes back to a sitio or barangay for visitation and follow-up. Most of the time, instead of the learners going to the community learning center, the ALS mobile teacher brings the learning materials to the learners to help them acquire basic literacy skills or continuing education. Let's highlight community learning center. So, I think that you have heard this from previous discussions or meetings. Actually, some districts are using this. In Talibon, I think they are currently using the community learning center. However, in doing such approach, we have to follow the regulations coming from the IATF, coming from the Division of Bohol, and of course, coming from our local government unit. So we must have a rain check on the different cautions and warnings before we conduct the learning in community learning centers. Now the question is, can we conduct face-to-face learning session with our students? Yes. However, we must follow the guidelines prescribed by IATF and DepEd's required health standard framework. Now the question is, do we still have mass gatherings? Now, mass gatherings such as, but not limited to, movie screenings, concerts, sporting events, and other entertainment activities, religious services, and work conferences shall be allowed provided that participants shall be limited to 50% of the seating or venue capacity. For K-12 basic education, the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan of the DepEd shall be adopted And this is coming from the Omnibus Guidelines. Now, what are the DepEd or DepEd's required health standards framework? Actually, there are four. They are increase physical and mental resilience, reduce contact, reduce transmission, and reduce duration of infection. Question: if a student decides to change his or her learning modality, is she allowed to do that? Yes, as long as she has valid reasons, and aside from that, teachers should cater these changes to ensure that everyone receives education in these times. The DLL or the DLDM adopted by the school or chosen by the learner or parent may be changed when deemed necessary and possible based on but not limited to any of the following: health and physical distancing protocols and other guidelines set in the respective areas, availability of public transport, changes in the health status of the learner, results showing that the learner is not doing well in the learning delivery modality chosen, and indications and reports of negligence and abuse validated through home visitations. Now, let's cite this example. Let's have C, changes in the health status of the learner. Now, let's not just focus on the learner, but the whole community. I remembered when there was a high surge of COVID cases in Malingen, a lot of students were given online modules because they cannot get the modules because they were on quarantine or they were locked down at that time. So that is an example of considering situations based on case-to-case basis. Now, another question. What will happen to learners who do not have household facilitators? Let's define terms first. Household facilitators are parents or guardians that are considered tutors in their homes. For learners without available learning facilitators at home, subject teachers or a cluster learning facilitator may conduct home visits following social distancing protocols, or they may communicate through text messages, phone, live chats, or through other available forms of communication to provide assistance or remediation. Teachers or learning facilitators may be provided with load, allowance, and traveling expenses chargeable against local funds subject to availability of funds and applicable rules and regulations. So, as teachers, if we have found out that that person or that child or that learner has no learning facilitator, it is our job to intervene and provide remediation of the situation. Now, who are exempted to conduct home visitations? Since we are talking about home visitations, the following teachers shall be exempted from home visitation during ECQ, MECQ, and GCQ. First, teachers who are 60 years old and above, teachers with immunodeficiency, comorbidities, or other health risk, teachers who are pregnant, and teachers affected by the respective local COVID severity classification in their area of residence, in which case, school officials like school heads, public schools, district supervisors, education program supervisors, and other responsible community stakeholder may be assigned to attend to the organized clusters of learners, particularly in cases where assistance of a learning facilitator is much needed by the learners. Strong school, home, and community is needed at this time. Now, what should our school do to strengthen community partnership? In the context of the present crisis, dialogue with parents and the wider community is a key step to ensure that the school, parents, or guardians and the wider community have reached a degree of shared accountability and responsibility for the learning delivery modalities. Now, school administrators, teachers, parents, guardians, and community partners shall provide adequate and appropriate guidance and support for the learners to ensure that their new experience with these learning modalities shall be properly transitioned both at home and in school. While mass gathering is not yet allowed by the IATF, school shall initiate online orientation, program for parents, online trainings for learning facilitators, and webinars on home-school partnership. Now, our lesson was about learning interventions, but we haven't tackled about why should we conduct learning intervention. Where first, the goal is to provide intervention to learners who cannot manage independent learning, including learners with disabilities and special needs. Next is to provide aid to those who do not have a household member or any responsible adult available to provide instructional support and facilitate distance learning delivery modalities. Next is to ensure that holistic education is given to the child, which will not only focus on academics but shall encompass the spiritual and psycho-emotional growth of the child. Now, before we have the next part, which is what is the Department of Education's response to support mental resilience, we're going to let you watch about a video presentation our colleague has made during the paambit, and let's watch this.
Ever wondered what is currently happening in the north part of Bohol? How schools are coping with the new normal? In Bien Unido District, specifically President Carlos P. Garcia Technical Vocational School of Fisheries and Arts, we made sure here that DepEd's vision for learning in the new normal is realized. Currently, we have 68 teachers and 5 non-teaching staffs, hurdling to cater our students' chosen learning modality. For the school year 2020-2021, we have at least 1,679 student enrollees. 1,660 of them chose the modular delivery learning and 19 of them chose the online delivery learning. Here is our principal to update us with our school's plans and actions for the new normal.
Mayong adlaw kanatong tanan, aniata karon sa opisina sa atong principal aron ipadangat ang plano sa umaabot nga school year 2020-2021. Mayong buntag, sir. Okay, so karon sir, ato ipadangat ang atong mga plano sa school year 2020-2021 sa atong tulunghaan sa President Carlos P. Garcia.
Sumanod sa atong school learning activity plan, atong plano ang pagpadayon sa pagtunga sa itong mga kabataan sugod karong October 5, pinangagi sa duha ka learning modality. Muna niini ang ipili sa mga kabataan kung sa atong mga estudyante mao ang modular learning o ang ikaduhang o ang itawag na ito online distance learning. Ang itong mga pagpangandam ng imo nini o nga nini panahon na padayon ang atong mga maestra sa pag-print sa atong mga learning activity sheets o sa atong mga learning modules para sa ato ang modular learning delivery. Padayon po ang atong mga pangmaestra sa pagpangandam sa ilasang mga learning materials para sa ato ang offering online delivery of learning, ODL, online distance learning. O niya sa pagkakaroon, akong masulti nga nasiguro sa mga 85 to 90% nga ready na ang atong school sa pagbalik sa klase karong October 5. O nagpasalamat ta sa mga stakeholders nato, ang atong mga ginikanan, PTA, ang atong local government units, ang atong mga teachers sa ilang pagbuling aron mahimong ganda ang atong eskwelahan. Kung ato sa ganda, mga health protocols ato nang in place aron safety ang atong mga pagtutubo sa ilang paghimo sa ilang trabaho. Kung niya pag-abot po sa panahon, pwede na mabalik ang mga bata, safety po sila. Ang atong mga teachers sa kasamtangan, padayon nga nag-observar sa atong standard health protocols, no? Pag-wear o mask, pag-wear o fishing, paggamit o hand sanitizer sa mga sakupon, o pagpamunakan naman sa kamot gamit ang sabon. O most of ang atong ipangandaman karon nga ang atong mga provisions for the reproduction of our learning modules and number na atong through sa atong imuhi palit og daghang mga bond papers, mga printers, doon natay 1 ka printer karon, 14 ka printer sa atong tibok eskwelahan. Doon natay 5 ka photocopiers aron pag-reproduce sa atong mga learning modules. So, kasamtangan, doon nasantay 4 ka bago nga internet connection na ang duha niini hinatag sa LG. Kanya ang duha niini hindi ka pasab sa pagtambuhan na sa atong mga teachers. Kanya doon ay laing umabot nga duha, hindi ka nagbuhat mismo ni sa atong imbuogi. So kinitanan ng mga pagpanganda atong dito mo aron mahimong yun ready ang atong eskwelahan pag-abot sa October.
Daghang salamat sir sa ato ang nabuhat karon para sa ato ang kabataan ug sa umaabot nga school year 2020 to 2021.
To make sure that we are safe in our daily operations, our school strictly follows the health protocols mandated by IATF. Upon entering the school, temperatures are checked and hands are sanitized. Strict compliance on social distancing is also observed inside our offices. Wearing a face mask among teachers and staffs is highly required. In our school, every teacher was provided with face shields and face masks. Classrooms and offices were also provided with sprayers, alcohols, and fruit bats. To further prepare the teaching workforce in our school is currently working on having portable washing stands. Every now and then, teachers are reminded to wash their hands before and after working on the reproduction and segregation. To make sure that crowding will be avoided at all costs, different year levels are working on different classrooms. Teachers are then delegated to different teams. There are teams assigned for the reproduction of the LAS, there are teams for the segregation, and there are teams assigned for the distribution and retrieval of the LAS. has a role to play in this feat to bring education amidst the pandemic. In this battle, all is possible with proper planning, cooperation among stakeholders, and resilience in facing the pandemic. And now we are back. I hope that you have enjoyed that AVP or audio video presentation that we have prepared for you. Now let's talk about mental resilience and the Department of Education's response to it. Now, if we're going to say learning intervention, we should not only intervene or provide remediation to academic subjects, but also we need to include the mental health of our learners to provide holistic education. So, what is the Department of Education's response to support mental resilience? Now, in order to further strengthen the role of parents and teachers as the education frontline amid the COVID-19 pandemic, the Department of Education, or DepEd, is conducting a series of psychosocial support and training for teachers, parents, school heads, and identified DepEd region and division non-teaching personnel as the opening of school year 2020-2021 approaches. There are three categories that were given. First is that for parents, the department launched the Gabay Bahay, an online parenting series, which is a weekly online learning activity that aims to engage with parents in protecting the health, safety, and well-being of their children. Next is for secondary teachers, school heads, and identified DepEd region and division non-teaching personnel. Online trainings on the provision of remote psychological first aid PFA for learners using the supporting, enabling, and empowering students or SEES manual, supplemental online and self-guided PFA modules, and guidance notes have been launched. Lastly is a training on remote psychosocial support or PSS through play for elementary learners was also conducted for elementary school teachers, school heads, and the identified DepEd division non-teaching personnel on August 3 to 6, 2020. The Bureau of Human Resource and Organizational Development, or BHROD, Employee Welfare Division of EWD, and DRRMS, with the assistance of the National Education Academy of the Philippines, NAEP, also provided psychosocial support and training on wellness to teachers and non-teaching personnel. In short, we are very lucky that the Department of Education has been very keen in supporting mental health. So, as of the moment, we have actually guidance counselors, and we have also mental health hotlines that can cater mental health issues. Now, how teachers can support mental health amidst the pandemic. We're going to provide you with several suggestions that you can do in your classes. So the first thing we have to do is to identify the student or students who may have difficulties with anxiety or depression. The American Psychological Association suggested the following strategies to screen and identify students who are struggling. You can do this at the very onset of the school year or during or after. So the first one is for elementary students, screening involves teachers and students completing brief questionnaires regarding students' emotions and classroom behaviors. Next, at the middle and high school levels, screening primarily relies on student questionnaires regarding the frequency or severity of any emotional concerns. Next is, teachers also may ask to nominate students who appear to be excessively anxious or frequently sad. So you can conduct it in your classes and ask around kinsa man tong
nagsubo og kasing-kasing din ha, na naay gidala-dalang mga emotions and feelings na have that are detrimental to their health. Now, the last one is students can complete also questionnaires using paper and pencil surveys, or more appropriately for online instruction phases through online secure questionnaires. Now, these are just suggestions, but if you have in mind something that you can also do in your classes, feel free to also do that and share it to us. Now, there are several observations of behaviors that we can identify. We have, according to the National Association of School Psychologists, children may display grief through regressive behaviors, social withdrawal, anger at the deceased, decreased verbalization, attention and concentration, academic performance or attendance, increased anxiety, irritability, aggression, or high risk behaviors, guilt, depression, somatic complaints, sleep or eating disturbances. Now, the second thing after identifying is to respond to students' problems, address grief, loss, and anxiety. As teachers, we have a responsibility to address mental health issues. If mental health issue is manageable, you can conduct a telecounseling with your student. But if it is something that needs professional help, find people and professionals to help the child. Now, depression and anxiety has no face. One cannot tell apart who is feeling depressed and who is clinically depressed. But as teachers, how can we spot and identify students who are struggling emotionally? In a world of social media, I guess we can go through their Facebook accounts, their Twitter accounts, their social media accounts, and see for ourselves how are they doing. Now, we can check on their Facebook accounts. Most of our students are on Facebook. Though we cannot be physically present for them, we can actually be there for them through social media. Let's bear in mind that while teachers may be able to offer reassurance and support to students with mild levels of anxiety and depression, some students may need professional help. For example, if a student talks about having suicidal thoughts, this should always be taken seriously. Teachers can reach out to school counselors for support and advice on how to help these students. Now, I'm going to share to you a true story that has happened to me last year. And one of our colleagues knows or knew this story. I was viewing my Facebook friends, My Days, when I saw this, My Day. I instantly chatted someone from the school kasi this student is a student from PCPG. And then after that, Sir Abraham was the person that I chatted. And after that, I messaged the person. And then she was very, I don't know, she was masking it actually. Ningon siya, wala ra ni ma'am, okay ra ni ma'am. Kanang, salamat kaayo ma'am. But I was actually worried. So, of course, at that time, I can't report it right away. Kay, I'm not sure if this person is just calling for attention or unsa iyang gustong ipasabot adto. So after several days, I always ask her, kumusta naman ka Inday? Unsa naman nahitabo, napabakahipang bati-bati, nasa pa may imong gipang huna-huna din ha. And then luckily and happily, she was feeling okay and she was better after that. Currently wala na siya issue na ing-ani. But if the question is, was I effective in that way? I think na mas na okay po to na situation for me. Now, one thing that we have to learn from our daily struggles in life is that take all sides of suicidal behavior seriously. Kasi emotions are very fragile. So it can be broken, like it can be a whim. So karon nakahuna-huna siya patay, sunod nakahuna-huna na pud siya og mabuhi siya. So we have to take precaution to these behaviors. Now, the third thing that we can do in our class is to emphasize social emotional learning in your class or in your lessons. Again, social emotional learning. So the first thing we can do is, according to Borman and Dubinsky, feelings temperature. So we can include this in our lessons. By labeling their emotions using feelings word chart, then they can rate the intensity of the emotion on a scale from 1 to 10 and notice where in their body they're experiencing the feeling. So we can also devise this. We can have mood charts or feeling journal. And also, you can normalize and validate feelings by taking bits of time throughout the day for direct social emotional education. You can normalize, validate feelings by taking bits of time throughout the day for direct social emotional. For example, you can read aloud about feelings or mindfulness or facilitate journaling, role playing, and media discussions. Now, third is incorporate mindfulness and relaxation. We have creative ways to incorporate mindfulness into your classroom. We have 2-minute meditation. Try starting the day or taking scheduled breaks with 2 minutes where you encourage your students to focus only on their deep, slow breathing. As teachers, we can also do this. Relaxation skill of the week. Teaching relaxation strategies when kids are calm gives them tools to use when their feelings do get intense. Build their toolkits by introducing a new relaxation skill every week and practicing it daily as a class. Some simple skills to focus on include paced belly breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and guided imagery. Now, I think this is the fifth step. Give thoughtful feedback. Students remember what you say. So be careful when giving negative feedback. Shaming a student for not listening or performing only makes it worse and can even be a trigger for suicidal thoughts or actions. If a student isn't performing, ask what is making it harder for them to focus on their work. Next is reach out to parents. You may also be able to help parents who are struggling to balance time with their children with time on the job, if they still have one. And those parents fortunate enough to be able to work from home are likely not used to doing so while managing their kids' demands for attention. Teachers may be able to help students indirectly by reaching out to parents and offering them support and advice on how to structure their children's days to include time for learning. Parents may also need to be more flexible in terms of tech time. There are only so many homework assignments to complete, chores to do, and walks or bike rides to take before kids get bored. For better or worse, tech time can be a helpful way for kids to deal with their underlying anxiety. It serves as a distraction and may make it easier for parents to get their work done as well. Sixth, use resources. There are sites which can offer mental health issues to watch for and steps that school administrators can take to make the school environment more supportive of students' mental health needs. Now, here are several. We have Bohol Suicide Prevention, World Mental Health Project Bohol Mental Health Awareness, and Pagpakabuhi.
Since a while ago we're talking about suicide, and of course we have this question in mind on how to react when we find out that someone is suicidal or someone has suicide ideation. So here is a part of it that can answer and help us. Now, suicide and what to do when someone is suicidal. So the first thing is start by asking questions. The first step is to find out whether the person is in danger of suicidal feelings. Now, take note, be sensitive,
but ask direct questions. Questions like, how are you coping with what's been happening in your life? Do you ever feel like just giving up? Have you ever thought about suicide before or tried to harm yourself before? So these are just things that you can ask and just try to assess where he or she is in his suicidal ideation. Now, asking about suicidal thoughts or feelings won't push someone into doing something destructive. In fact, offering an opportunity to talk about feelings may reduce the risk of acting on suicidal feelings. Now, the second thing that you can do is to offer support. Encourage first the person to call a suicide hotline number. This can actually help him sort his feelings out or her feelings out. Next is encourage the person to seek treatment. Mental health is serious. Thus, if it needs professional help, encourage that person to help that treatment for him or her. And then next is be respectful and acknowledge the person's feelings. Don't try to talk the person out of his or her feelings or express shock. Remember, even someone who's suicidal isn't thinking logically. The emotions are real. Not respecting how the person feels can shut down communication. Like for example, you're just going to tell him na, nag-inarte raman ka. Get over it. Or, sama na, uy, ka nang, katoxic ba? I mean, depression, anxiety, and these struggles are real. So make sure that when the person is trying to express his or her feelings, then accommodate those feelings and don't invalidate them. Another thing, don't be patronizing or judgmental. When someone expresses their side, don't tell them that, ni ako manggani kay ing ani manggani ang nahitabo nako mas worse pa jud tong kang kuan. Don't be like that. Again, don't patronize and at the same time, don't be judgmental. Last but not the least, and I keep on repeating this, take all signs of suicidal behavior seriously because we don't know who is drowning and who is unhappy in these times. Again, depression, struggles, and anxiety does not wear masks. Now, one last thing. Promote physical distancing, not social distancing. Talk to someone today. Pangumusta, um, talk to them, how are they, and then catch up with them. Now, I think we are all done with our part 1 and part 2 of learning interventions. I hope that you have learned something. And I apologize if you can hear some tuktugaok sa mga manok because it's really hard to record when you are in your room and you're surrounded with chickens. And I also apologize if there are points that aren't discussed properly. I'm trying my best to really discuss it, but this is the first time that I am talking and discussing through this platform, and it's kind of difficult because you have these things in mind but you can't quite um string your thoughts together. Now, let us proceed to individual learning monitoring plan. Have you remembered this during our LDM sessions, in our LAC sessions? Now you are going to write and create and make one. Now in here, this is a sample. So we're going to fill the following table. So learning area, for example, I have in here creative writing. Now learners' needs have not mastered the basics in writing. Intervention or strategies provided. Additional activities given through learning activity sheet or teacher-made learners home tasks which will simplify further the topic. Written testimony and documentation from the parents or guardians will be asked as well. Now you can also place the different interventions that were mentioned in here. For example, you're going to include a project impact and then you contextualize it. So that depends on the subject that you are teaching. Next is
fill up monitoring date, and then check on the learner status. In this way, we can have an assessment, we can have a feedbacking, and we can also have a result because we are monitoring the student's progress. Now, my part is done. I hope that we're all fine, and I hope that after this inset, we can spend the holidays with our family. And that is all. I'm Mary Shalupadillo, and thank you so much.
Hi! Good morning, amazing teachers of CPG. I am Harleen Madaloso from Senior High School. Since we are done discussing our topic, we'll move forward. At this moment, you will need your study notebook. In your study notebook, you will write your insights and reflections of your new learnings on our topic, which is learning interventions. At the same time, you'll make an individual learning monitoring plan for learners who are in different paces, the slow learners and the fast learners. Kay nungdong mo itong nagama tag LDM course, di ba required to siya? Usa na siya sa atong gibuhat. Kung wala mo kay nungdong, tagaan to mog sample. You are required to include 3 slow learners and 2 fast learners in your individual learning monitoring plan. See the screen for the example. Your answers will be sent through the link provided. Now, amazing teachers will need to answer the evaluation form. Don't worry, teachers. We'll just post the link below or in our group chat. In just one click, you can access the evaluation form. Hassle-free! You can access the evaluation form within 24 hours only. For your comments and suggestions, you may send it through Messenger. To inspire us to work on our learning interventions, let us take a look for a short video from our students. Just chill and relax!
Kinsa sa mga teachers sa CPG ang imong pasalamatan?
Si Sir Marjorie Marilis kay tungod sa iyang pagsabot sa amo ang mga batasan ug sa iyang pagsakripisyo naghihapon siya para sa tabang namin.
Thank you, Ma'am Nelia, Ma'am Sarah, and Ma'am Priscilla for the support, Char.
Unsa pay lain imong masabi pasalamatan nila?
And advance Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Salamat, Ma'am Louise. Salamat kay bisan pandemic karon feel gihapon namo ang imong pagka-advisor namo og salamat kay very accommodating kaayo ka og salamat kay imo jud may update kung unsay mga panghitabo sa school.
Hi Ma'am Fiona, salamat dahil sa pagsabot niyo bahalag badlongan. Salamat po kay buwatan mi kaayo. Kapag ka magsabot na salamat.
Oh, Bisaya.
Thank you, Ma'am Carmen. Tulo na mo. Good advisor.
Thank you kayo Ma'am Kit malapat sa pagtulong. Pagsabot na ba namo sa mga nakatasa aron na po at we miss you. Thank you kaayo.